Welcome to this week's edition of Bowl Season Stories. I'm Nick Carparelli, the Executive Director of Bowl Season. And each week, different guests from the world of college football join me to talk about current topics in the sport, as well as discuss what they remember most about their bowl game experiences. Our guests include members of the media, former players, coaches, sports executives, and even fans who will share their favorite bowl season stories with you. Today, we are joined by national college football writer Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic and three-time Super Bowl champion, NFL analyst, and fellow Syracuse alum, Daryl Moose Johnston. And lastly, but not least, Duke's Mayo Bowl Executive Director, Danny Morrison. Also joining me as she does each week is our on-air producer, Angela Lang. Angela, did you watch those games this weekend? College football is back.
All weekend. That was what's on my TV all weekend. Several straight days of games and some really exciting finishes for some of those big key matchups. I want to get right into it. As you mentioned, Nicole Auerbach, senior writer for The Athletic, is here to join us, and love to get y'all's take back and forth on the weekend. Nicole covers college football. She's actually the 2020 National Sports Writer of the Year by the National Sports Media Association. So we're super excited to have her, the youngest national winner of this award. So Nicole, welcome to the show. We know you have a great perspective on what we saw this weekend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it was really fun. I was on my couch because it's so hard when you cover a game sometimes to keep up with everything else that is happening everywhere else. So I am going to go to Oregon, Ohio State, and that will be my return to the stadium life. But I basically sat on my couch for 5 days straight and watched all of these games. And it was amazing. I think my favorite moments, I mean, obviously Mackenzie Milton and the Disney-esque movie that he was basically putting on for us and that dramatic comeback. But I think it was also Enter Sandman at Virginia Tech and Jump Around at Wisconsin. It was the atmospheres of these games that I think we knew we were missing them last year. It definitely felt like we were, but to have them back just was it was refreshing. It was inspiring. It just felt great.
Yeah, I agree, Nicole. I did the same thing you did. I was contemplating going to a game. I can't wait to get back into a stadium. But this first week I said, there's too many I want to see. I want to sit on my couch and soak them all in. I too am going to be going to a game this weekend. I'm right down the road from my house. I'm going to see Air Force Navy, great rivalry game on 9/11. So I'm looking forward to that. But this weekend, I had two takeaways for me. I thought the number of quality matchups and great games for week one was something I took note of. It doesn't seem like we've seen a lot of that in recent years. And, I don't know, maybe that was a product of like you said, people missing college football, missing the atmosphere, missing those kind of matchups. And maybe there was a more willingness for teams to play those games early on. And the pageantry, the fans, like you said, I think the announcers of that Virginia Tech game and then the Wisconsin game too over on Fox did a great job of saying nothing during those segments of the game. They let the Enter Sandman unfold uninterrupted. They let the jump around happen. And the camera crews did a great job of capturing that on air. And those moments gave me chills.
Yeah, I'm with you on the games themselves. I mean, we know that these things get scheduled years in advance. So it was certainly, years in the works, but I mean, we would love to see Clemson, Georgia open the season every single year. I thought Maryland, West Virginia was a great game and obviously very geographical, you could get a lot of fans from both sides to those games. And I also think that one thing that really helped was there was a lot of conference games. We had a lot of ACC games and Big Ten games. And I think that was really helpful too, because we actually learned about some of these teams. Like we learned about Iowa and Indiana because they played a conference game right out of the gate, and Wisconsin, Penn State, and all these things. That I liked that too. I like sprinkling in actual conference games that are going to count for something for these teams.
Yeah, I agree with you that we mentioned that Virginia Tech game, Virginia, North Carolina, that early in the year was pretty cool to see. And, you reminded me of something. I'm in my mind, I'm thinking of my conference office days at the Big East. Jim Phillips, a new commissioner at the ACC, was interviewed. I think it was during the Georgia Clemson game. And somebody asked him a question about what a blow it is to his conference that North Carolina lost. And he answered it very eloquently, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, it was one of his teams that beat North Carolina. So, how bad could that be? That's always the debate in within a conference, right? If you have one team that's ranked, do you want that team to keep winning, or is it good to have more balance in your league and another team win? And either way, I thought that was a great showcase for the ACC that day.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I mean, I think you don't want your marquee teams to lose or to be out of a playoff race or whatever that might look like. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely a big win for Virginia Tech, and that's also important for the ACC. So it's, you're trying to figure that stuff out. I mean, I also just think it was a weird weekend where a lot of teams we had high expectations with struggled and looked rusty and looked like it was week one. And there were very few teams, like, I'm pretty sure we all feel good about Alabama. They're going to be very, very good again. Outside of them, like, we didn't, there were a lot of teams that were still going to wait and see what they work through their issues. So, I don't think North Carolina was alone in that from week one either.
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just about the heavyweights. I enjoy seeing some of the newer emerging programs continue to have success. Coastal Carolina had a great year last year. They won their first game, and they're ranked pretty high, to start the season, which is different than last year. They had to earn their way in. Now they're just going out there each Saturday, proving that they belong. Cincinnati, is another, group of five team that may soon be a Power Five team. Well, that's a different topic, but it's good to see some new blood up in the rankings there.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati was pretty interesting because, like, it was just so ho hum and no one really paid much attention, which was, again, kind of rare because a lot of these other teams we saw in the top 10 struggle, or at least it was more uncomfortable than we were expecting. But Cincinnati's about to get into the meat of their schedule too, with Indiana and Notre Dame. So I'm really excited for that. And I'm with you. I mean, I like when those teams make things interesting. I mean, I think one of the most read things I wrote last year was about the playoff rankings in Cincinnati and Coastal, and that they weren't getting treated fairly the way that other teams were, or getting the benefit of the doubt because of, not being in a power conference. And I think that that's part of what we love about college football, is having those types of teams and feeling for them. Like, we were all staying up and watching Coastal, and, Coastal BYU is the best game of the year and the best story of the year last year. And, like, would people have thought that last summer, that they would care so much about BYU Coastal or Coastal in general and the mullets and all of these things? No, like, that's what, you never really know where the season's going to take you. And so it sucks sometimes that it takes like a full year for then those teams to get like a kind of level of respect in the rankings and things that they probably deserved sooner. But that's how you get Cincinnati starting in the top 10. So I'm okay with that this year, because they all came back to have this special season, and I think they're going to be pretty good again.
Yeah, I agree. I think college football sometimes is a little bit of a slow moving ship. It takes time to build brands. It takes time for these teams to earn the respect, and some of them just they can't do it in 1 year. But I think you're right. Cincinnati is an example of, given what they've done the last couple of years, they're coming into this year and people are like, yeah, Cincinnati won again. They won pretty handily. It's maybe a good sign for them that people are not scrutinizing them as much. But I'm interested to see how they do the rest of the way.
Yeah. I think I'd love for them to stay close enough to the college football playoff conversation that we get to discuss them all year.
Yep, I agree.
Well, thanks, Nicole, so much for your insight, and great to think about all those as we head into week 2. And I know you're going to stick around and help us interview our next guest, who is a 3-time Super Bowl champion, the first fullback to be selected to the Pro Bowl. But before all of that, he went to Nick's alma mater, Syracuse, and was an All-American there. Please welcome Daryl Johnston to the show. Daryl, it's great to have you.
Nick Carparelli here. Great to have you on the show. Always special for me to talk to a fellow Syracuse alum. And I think we're not going to want to bore the listeners, but you and I could probably talk all day about mutual friends that we share a fondness for. So we'll have to do that at some point. But jumping right in, you played in 3 bowl games, the Cherry Bowl, which we all remember well, in 1985, the Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day in 88, the Hall of Fame Bowl, which is now the Outback Bowl, in 1989. You closed out your career in that game with a win over LSU. What do you remember about that game, that last game of your college career?
The LSU game was very interesting because the setup at the stadium, both the locker rooms were backed up to each other. So At that time, LSU being in the SEC, there still wasn't a lot of respect for probably football from the North. Even though we had gone to the Sugar Bowl the previous year and tied Auburn when they kicked the last second field goal to tie us. So you would have thought there would have been a little bit more respect from an SEC opponent because of what we'd done the previous season to their co-conference champion. But there was still that confidence, that swagger from the SEC that they were better than other conferences, and we were still independents at the time. So our coach walked in, Dick McPherson walked into the locker room, and instead of giving us a pregame speech, he had everybody get real quiet and said, just listen to what they think of you. That's all you need to hear before kickoff. And we listened to LSU as they tried to hype each other up, how they were going to dismantle the boys from the North who don't know how to play football. And this is the SEC, and we're going to teach these guys a lesson. And we're all just sitting there going, do they realize that we can hear what they're saying right now? So that was probably the best idea I've seen by a coach in that situation. Was nothing he was going to say pre-game was going to motivate us more than the opportunity to listen to what our opponent was saying about us at that time. So we went out on the field. I think our first drive was 17 plays and went up 7-0 and never really looked back. And that was a very good team. They really were, a ton of respect for Auburn in the Sugar Bowl and then also LSU in the Hall of Fame game. It is exciting for us to have the opportunity to play an SEC team. And, our two bowl games there at the end, I think we showed well for a team from Central New York.
Daryl, it's Nicole Auerbach. Thanks so much for making some time to chat. I'm curious about your first bowl experience when you're a young player and everyone talks about how much you get out of these types of experiences, or even just how fun they are when you are young and getting to go somewhere at the end of the season to celebrate a season, but also just to get more practices in and get those reps. Like what do you remember about it the first time you went when you were, maybe, just trying to get more snaps at that point in your career? Yeah,
just a redshirt freshman that year and really just kind of on special teams and, trying to find your way and discover your role, for your skill set in the offense. The one thing, as you point out, kind of a reward, at the end of the season to go to a bowl game. And when you leave Syracuse, New York, and where you land is actually colder and snowier, it hasn't worked out real well. So Pontiac, Michigan, that day when we got there was very wintry, and we were playing Maryland, which, if memory serves me correct, was the preseason #1 that year. So kind of strange that they were down at that level in that bowl game. But it was a 2-year run with the Cherry Bowl. The people were fantastic. I think, as you pointed out, for us, it was a great experience as a reward for our hard work to get some extra time, prepping for the next season. Just really to be together as a team. We were still trying to find our way there. And I think that, that bowl game, even though it was a short-lived celebration, for the Cherry Bowl committee and everything that they did there. Yeah, I think for us, it did pay dividends. It was that first step of being rewarded for all the hard work. And then that kind of created that desire within our team to see if we could make it to a higher level bowl moving forward.
I think, Daryl, you make a good point there. We talk a lot about bowl season and the various bowl games. They're all so meaningful to everybody. And, the Cherry Bowl in that 1 year may not, and was not your best season, but it was certainly a building block towards getting to the Sugar Bowl 2 years later. And, you mentioned the Sugar Bowl. I want to talk about that a little bit. That was after your junior year, of course. Undefeated season. Don McPherson was your quarterback, a good friend of both of ours, runner up to the Heisman Trophy. Famous 16-16 tie. As you mentioned, Coach Pat Dye of Auburn elected to kick the field goal to tie it instead of going for the win. Coach Mack was not excited about that decision. He was pretty animated on the sidelines, and I guess he was wouldn't let go of the championship trophy after the game. I know Syracuse fans flooded the Auburn mailboxes, Auburn football office mailboxes with ties in the weeks after that game. So to tell us about your memories from that game.
Yeah. Our fan base sent ties down to Auburn, and then Auburn sent sour grapes, back to Syracuse. As a little war happened afterwards. For us, it was interesting because we were very multi-dimensional offensively. But as you mentioned, Donnie McPherson was our quarterback. I think the foundation of what we did was really kind of our freeze option and our speed option on the edges. And Auburn was so athletic, sideline to sideline that as we started to try to run the option, we realized, that was not going to be very successful that day. So we kind of shifted up and we turned to a between the tackles run game. And that was one of the great things about that team and that offense. What George DeLeon put together for us was we could come to the line of scrimmage with 5 plays called, and everybody knew by shades in the front, coverages, numbers in the box. We didn't have to wait for Donnie to give us the play call. So 0-1 freeze option, check, 36-37 power alert, 59 ready break, and we go to the line of scrimmage and we've got 5 plays called. So we're gonna run the freeze option on your edges. We're gonna go power inside, and if you kind of crowd the box for our run game and are a little bit light on the back end, we've got an alert quick game called with 9 routes on the outside. So we felt very, very comfortable that even though we couldn't get outside against the athleticism of the Auburn defense, that we could come back inside and run and throw the ball well. So when you sit back and rewatch that tape, I'm pretty sure we went over 200 yards rushing, close to 250 yards rushing, against Auburn, who was a top 10 rushing defense in the country that year, and especially coming out of the SEC. So it was one of the things that we were really proud of, but a lot of people will go to the decision by Auburn to kick a field goal to tie that game. And I've talked to Tommy Agee, who was at the University of Auburn, and he said that the decision there was we had quick kicked twice in that game. And that was one of the things that really stuck to them was, listen, these guys gave up on 3rd down and kicked the ball. So we're not losing to a team that's not playing to win. That was the reasoning, and that kind of helped me out a little bit with their decision to kick the field goal to tie us at the end. But for me, everything goes back to the 3rd and 1. We had an opportunity on 3rd and 1 to really kind of take the rest of the time off the clock, kick that field goal to go up 16-13 and really limit the amount of time, if there was going to be any time, for Auburn to get the ball back and put themselves in a position to tie that game. So I will always bring it back to us on the offensive side of the ball with a critical snap in that game on a 3rd and 1 inside the 20-yard line. We didn't get the job done, and we allowed Auburn the opportunity to go down the field and kick a field goal to tie us.
Pretty good memory there, Daryl.
Yeah, it's kind of burned in there.
I could tell. Well, tying games was actually nothing new for Auburn that year. That was their 3rd tie of the season.
Wow.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Wait, so do you watch back Syracuse games often, or what would cause you to reminisce and put something on?
Getting together with the guys, or every once in a while on television, they'll roll out some of the old classic games, and all of a sudden your text will blow up. Hey, it's the Syracuse Penn State game from '87. And then, you're just kind of chattering with everybody, during the course of the game. But, we've got stuff on tape. I've gone back and watched a couple of them. You go back and watch the hard ones. Our senior year, we ended up finishing the year with 10 wins, with the bowl game victory against LSU. We were 9-2 regular season. Our 2 losses, we had 11 turnovers. So we lost at Ohio State with, I think, 5, and then we lost at West Virginia late in the year with 6. So, those are the 2 games that you go back and you watch, and we were, especially the Ohio State game, we were a better team than Ohio State that year. We beat ourselves. Now West Virginia ended up being undefeated, and they had Major Harris, and they were a really, really good team. But we did not play well. We did not give them our best effort. But it was really disappointing, and I've gone back and I've watched that Ohio State game, and we did not play well. And Ohio State ended up not having a great year. So that was a loss that we would have loved to have had back. And, to throw together an 11-0-1 and an 11-1 season back-to-back would have been something really, really impressive, for the Syracuse football program. And that was kind of the stepping stone because after that, Nicole, it was the Donovan McNabbs, Dwight Freeney's, Rob Conrad's, Marvin Harrison's, that talent that came in after some of those seasons that we had. I remember turning on the TV one time, and Syracuse was at the Big House, and it was 31-7 in the fourth quarter. There was a Syracuse team a couple of years after we graduated that I thought was probably better talent-wise than us, but I'll challenge anybody from a chemistry culture standpoint to match that 87 team. That team was, we always talk about football as a second family. That 87 team really lived up to that mantra. And we may not have been as talented as some of the people we played, but nobody was tighter and closer and more of a family than we were.
Yeah, having been a part of that program, Daryl, there's no question that those years following, your era, those teams, those coaches would look back and refer to you guys as kind of the model and the guys who kind of built that program. I was a GA there in 92 and 93. We went to Colorado and went to the Fiesta Bowl, beat Colorado in 92. But I think a lot of young football fans would not appreciate the fact that from 1987 to 2001, 15-year stretch, Syracuse went to 12 bowl games. And that was back when there was only 20 bowl games around. Yeah. We played some pretty good football back then. I'm looking forward to getting back to those days.
Well, and not just going to the bowl games, but I think, Paul tagging on to the end of Coach McPherson, I think it was 9 consecutive wins or 11 consecutive wins. I mean, it was even that, the number to be able to go to a bowl game to qualify because you played well during the season, but then to get to that game and play really, really well, and to be able to string a bunch of victories together in bowl games with the level of competition that you're playing. Especially
when you're playing quality teams like you guys did in those games. You touched on, you mentioned your teammates a little bit. I always like to ask this question, and this isn't just about bowl games. It's about your college football experience in general. We mentioned Donnie Mack, Robert Drummond, and you on offense. You had guys like Terry Wood and David Holmes, Rob Burnett. I promised myself I would mention our good friend Marcus Paul on this. Yeah. We lost him way too soon last year. Just such a great human being. But those guys, you played in high school and you had some great friends, I'm sure, and still do to this day. That college experience is unique. NFL is a different game. Talk about, your experiences in college, the friendships you made, the bonds you made, and how that shaped the rest of your life. Yeah, we still, we've got a very, very tight-knit group. It was reunited with the passing of Marcus Paul last year. And that's one of the things that we've talked about. I'm going to forget a lot of guys. And it's amazing how many guys we've lost in that E7 team, but we've gone back and taken a look at that team photo, and it's amazing. Chris Ingram is gone. Marcus Paul is gone. Pat Kelly is gone. I'm going to forget several of them, but that's the one thing that really kind of shakes us and makes us every day, by the grace of God, that we're still here with our families because they've left us, and several others that I didn't mention. And that's been one of the tough things. And at that time, you're going through that growth and development, the critical years, 18 to 22, 18 to 23, the majority of us were redshirted. So we had 5 years together. You overlap with, the class that comes in behind you, the class that was there ahead of you. We just did a fundraiser for Marcus back in Syracuse in June, and we had a stretch of 11 years. So you're there for 5, but you've got 11 years where guys overlap a little bit. And it was amazing to see the turnout. I mean, Rudy Reed, who was one of the captains on the defense when we came in 1984, and everybody was terrified of him. There's Rudy Reed, at Marcus's, celebration. And then guys that were there as freshmen when Marcus was a senior and graduating, and they talked about Marcus, to the guys, that were coming in for the next 4 years. So we all think of this short window of 4 to 5 years while you're on campus, but the impact you make stretches out over a decade as the classes overlap and the stories continue. I mean, we heard about Jamie Kimmel and, all the stuff that those guys did. We were only there for a year or two together, but, it was infamous, the stories that came out. And you grow together, you find yourselves together. The friendships and just the struggles that you go through, I think, is what forms that bond. And, it really is a unique thing. And when everything happened last summer, after the George Floyd death and what had happened at Syracuse University kind of going in
towards the end of the fall semester, and there was an issue based on race on campus that was very inflammatory. Our group circled up in June and just, we needed to talk through things, and we had, it was a perfect split. There were 8 white guys and 8 black guys on the phone, just talking and sharing, and is there anything that we can do? And I remember Donnie being really concerned about, what was going to happen in the fall of 2020 when everybody came back onto campus, because they hadn't really put that fire out from December of the previous year. Right when they were getting back onto campus, everything got closed down because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was the type of group that we had. And I learned things about my teammates that I did not know while I was there at school with them. And hopefully they learned things from us that they didn't know about us. And it was a really unique environment and a really unique sharing situation where people were very open. But that's why that team did what they did as a football team, because they weren't just good football players. They were good young men who became good men later in life. And that was one of the things that Dick McPherson had a knack for. I don't know how he did it, but the kids that he recruited were good kids, and they became good men as they got older. And it was a unique skill. I've talked to other people, at the NFL level, you're going to meet guys from different universities and you talk to them. And I just don't think anybody had the experience that we had at Syracuse University, especially that 1987 class. And I'll always be grateful that I came there in 1984 and had the class that I had. And, the class above me was great. The class below us was great. It was just a 3-year stretch there where there was just such quality guys, and they're still great people and great friends to this day.
Yeah, you were mentioning, you hear from people who go to other programs and different experiences. I'm trying to think, like, it's got to be so rare that you guys were having that type of conversation summer of 2020, all these years later, and can have that openly and honestly. And it just feels like it's such a testament to that group of players and the relationships that you have, that you can talk about race and racism and like all these years later in a phone call and be open and honest.
It was amazing. It was amazing because you could see the hesitancy when we were starting to arrange the call. You knew there were conversations that were going on that were not inclusive of the 16 that were eventually on that call, just to check the temperature. Are we doing the right thing? Is this something that could damage the relationships that we have right now? Because this is a very tenuous situation. Who knows what direction this is going to go with. So there was a little bit of trepidation, from some of the guys to actually enter into this conversation, and it couldn't have gone better. It couldn't have gone better. So it is challenging as that was, as much hesitancy as there was from some of the guys. The people who felt it was critically important at that time were able to get everybody to come to the table and just try. Let's just try and see where this goes. And I think we were all shocked and pleasantly surprised to see what direction it went and how far it carried.
But there obviously had to be a lot of trust involved in order for the 16 of you to be willing to go into that conversation and open yourselves up like that. I think that probably speaks to the quality of your experience at Syracuse, obviously the bond you guys had. And to my question here, to Coach Mack, you mentioned that, you played for Coach Mack. He became a mentor to me as well. Just a great man. Tell me what it was like playing for Coach Mack and some of the things you learned from him.
Oh, it was amazing. Probably more like a father than a coach, for me. I'm very similar to my father in the demands that he had. So for me, some guys are like, oh, this guy is so hard. Oh my gosh. How do you do this day after day? You just work and grind and do everything. He's so similar to my father. You wouldn't believe it. And the guys that knew my dad were like, oh yeah, he's just like Butch. For me, it was easy. It was transitioning from, an environment I grew up with my dad is the lead male in the house, to going now to a football program, and your head coach is very, very similar personality wise. Demanding, expects your best every day. But I tell people all the time, I learned more about life than I learned about the game of football from Dick McPherson. He was one of those guys that was unique, that had no ego. He would delegate authority down to everybody else. You know, the X's and O's and all that was taught by position coaches and coordinators and things like that. He was the best manager, overseer, knowing what buttons to push, how to motivate every single person on that team. As a guy overseeing everything, I haven't been around anybody who's really kind of done it better. And I mean, Jimmy Johnson was obviously amazing here in Dallas, but Dick McPherson was just incredibly unique at knowing exactly what our team needed. Going back to that speech before the LSU game, we had to pull him out of 2 situations where he was going to get into a fight with opposition fans. We were at Penn State, and at the time, they got the little like trailers underneath the grandstands for, offenses in one, defenses in the other. Well, he brings us all together as a team into one of those units. And he said, guys, listen, this is the last game of a long series, and there's going to be a lot of emotion out there tonight. Keep your wits about you. Don't let the crowd be a factor in this game. Let's just go out there. Let's play our game. And so as we're leaving the trailer, you've got a path that takes you out to the field, and it is lined like 7 deep on each side with all Penn State fans. And after giving us the speech of keeping our wits about ourselves because it's going to be an emotional game, as we're walking through the path, somebody yells from the back, "Hey, McPherson, it's your fault that the rivalry dies tonight." Dick McPherson goes into the crowd to go after the guy. I mean, Marcus and I had to literally go in and grab him and pull him back and Coach, we got to get to the field. Remember what you said to us before the game. Don't let the crowd get to you. So he was fiery. He just, I know that wasn't intentional. That was Dick McPherson, a fiery Scotsman that was going in to defend his team and his reputation. So he was awesome. He was such a great guy.
He was certainly known for his sayings that he liked to repeat. I'm gonna start one of his sayings, and I guarantee you're gonna be able to finish it. You ready?
Yep.
If ifs and buts were candy and nuts,
it'd be Christmas every day.
There you go. Daryl, we're going to wrap this up. Our last segment, we call this our 4th and 1 segment. This is really quick. I'm going to give you four subjects, and you need to answer it. Either the first word that comes to your mind, it could be a phrase or sentence, but just the first thought that comes into your mind. Syracuse University.
Oh, starting point.
Dallas Cowboys.
America's team.
Dick McPherson.
Father figure.
Fullback.
Grit.
All right. Very good. Daryl, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure for me. I'm sure we'll talk again in the future. Go Orange. Nicole, thank you as well for chatting at the beginning and helping me ask Daryl questions along the way. I'm sure we'll talk again during the season. Thank you both for being on the show.
Absolutely. Take
Anytime.
care.
We're going to take a short break and be right back with the Duke's Mayo Bowl Executive Director, Danny Morrison. Stay with us.
Ticket Smarter is the official ticket resale marketplace of bowl season. Nothing compares to the power and excitement of live events. TicketSmarter is the smarter way to buy tickets for live events like sports, concerts, and theater. Visit ticketsmarter.com or download the app today.
Welcome back to Bowl Season Stories, and we're now ready to hear from our next guest. Danny Morrison is the executive director of the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, North Carolina, and just coming off a huge weekend as the Duke's Mayo Classic featured ECU versus App State and that key matchup of Week 1, Georgia versus Clemson. Danny, how are you doing?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me.
Well, Danny, it's, we talked earlier in the show. It's so good to have college football back. The season kicked off this past weekend with a bang, thanks in large part to your 2 games, the Duke's Mayo Bowl Classics. Tell us about how those games came together and what it felt like to have college football back in such a big way.
Well, we couldn't be more pleased. It was a great weekend in Charlotte. In fact, I'm not sure there'll be a better weekend in all of college football during the regular season. With App State and East Carolina on a Thursday night. And then we actually had another game on Friday night. It wasn't at Bank of America Stadium, but it was at Charlotte. So you had Charlotte Duke playing on the Charlotte campus. And then, of course, we had Georgia and Clemson, a top 5 matchup on Saturday night. So I don't think there's a better weekend of college football. We had game day here on Saturday morning, energy, vibrancy. As you well know, it takes everybody to make it work. And one of the blessings we have in Charlotte is we really have so much harmony among the CRVA and the city, the county, Bank of America Stadium, and the Panthers. And of course, it takes everybody to put it on. And I was so proud of our staff and the great job that they did in pulling all this together. So it was a great weekend. We originally had Appalachian State and East Carolina scheduled for a Saturday night. And then 2 years ago, I guess it was about 2 years ago, Greg McGarity and Dan Radakovich, we were talking about bringing this game to Charlotte. They were great. And then we got great cooperation from Doug Gillen at App State and John Gilbert at East Carolina. We were able to move the game to Thursday night, make a mega weekend out of it. I think everybody benefited by having the tight time frame, and it's always nice to be lucky. We had 3 of the most gorgeous days you could ever have in Charlotte on the Labor Day weekend. So it came together beautifully, and it was a fun weekend just to see people having a good time and vibrancy, and best of all, for an industry that just got crushed, the hospitality industry, to see the hotels full, the restaurants full. It just made a great weekend, and it's rewarding to see that kind of impact. And as you well know, our mission is to bring high-profile sporting events to Charlotte that also have an economic impact, and certainly that was accomplished this past weekend.
Well, you've been with the Duke's Mayo Bowl for a couple of years now, but you're certainly no stranger to Charlotte, having worked for many years for the Carolina Panthers. The way you answered that previous question, it's clear to all of us that the passion you have for Charlotte and Charlotte sports. Tell us about the bowl game itself. What does the Duke's Mayo Bowl mean to the entire community of Charlotte?
Well, first of all, we have an amazing partner in Duke's Mayo. Not only are they a Southern iconic brand, but they like to have fun with the brand. And we negotiated this whole sponsorship partnership during the pandemic. So then we get in, we thinking that it's only going to be a month or 2 or 3 months. Then we get to last year and we have our neutral site game with Notre Dame and Wake Forest. It gets moved 4 times and finally gets canceled. We get to the first Duke's Mayo Bowl, and we can only have 1,500 fans there. We had a great game with Wisconsin and Wake Forest. The economic impact is still major, even with a no fan situation. But I was so proud of you want to work with great people, and that's what the leadership of Duke's great people. They never panicked through the pandemic year. We pivoted umpteen times, and every time we pivoted, there was no gnashing of teeth. It was just a reality. It's what we're dealing with. We'll find a way to make it work. So now to come into this 21 year where we had the great weekend, this past weekend, and now as we point towards the Duke's Mayo Bowl, and we can get back to activating a lot of our events, like we incorporate a driving experience for all the players at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, which they're a terrific partner as well. We have a unique belt shopping spree. And so we're going to get back to the experiences for the players that we like to see, the experiences for the fans. The beauty of Charlotte is that fans can drive into the uptown area, which is a beautiful skyline, plenty to do, restaurants, park the car, walk everywhere, and then walk to the stadium. So the bowl has a significant economic impact. And the reason is that the duration, they're here 5 days, 4 days, and fans come, and it comes at a time when there's not as much activity around the Christmas season. So that certainly is another positive thing on the hospitality industry.
Prior to coming to Charlotte, Danny, you were the athletic director at TCU in the mid 2000s. When you were there, Coach Patterson took the Frogs to the Texas Bowl twice, Poinsettia Bowl in San Diego. What do you remember about those experiences for those TCU teams and the student athletes back before you were in the bowl business, but you were participating in bowl games as an athletic director?
Well, first of all, there's no bigger advocate for the bowl system than Gary Patterson. He embraced every single bowl. He loved bowl week. He made it fun for the players. He also wanted them to enjoy it as a reward for a regular season. And he also recognized the importance of the game, though. So he did an amazing job of balancing all that. So not only did you have fun, but you had, it was a reward and the importance of the game. His bowl record's pretty spectacular. So he gets it. He loves the bowl system. And I always appreciated how he really embraced the whole bowl experience.
You know, when you transferred from being an AD to an executive directors are a little bit of a club, right? They're a group of guys who are, you know, they're my bosses. I tell people all the time, I have 44 bosses. You're one of them, Danny. So hopefully I'm doing a good job. But they, you know, I love my job because the executive directors are such good people. You know, I think you have to be a good person to have that job. You're in the hospitality business. You want people to, it's serious business. You're doing a lot of great things in the community, but you want people to have fun and experience everything that bowl games have to offer and the communities have to offer. As you transition into an executive director role, though, you know, you were the new guy coming in a couple of years ago. Tell me about your colleagues. You know, who did you lean on during that transition? Were there any bowl executive directors that were you know, more helpful than others to you as you made that transition?
Well, first of all, I would agree with you in general about college athletics is that in general, I think the predominance of really, really good people throughout college athletics. And that's certainly true with executive directors of the various bowls. I've been on the job now about 2 years, and I can tell you who's been a great mentor has been Will Webb, the previous executive director. I was on the board of the Charlotte Sports Foundation when I was with the Panthers, and got to watch Will's incredible work. And so when I came on board a couple of years ago, I really leaned on Will Webb. He's been a great mentor for me. Wright Waters, Nick, and we're so thrilled to have you in this position and what you mean for our whole bowl season, the rebranding and all the efforts that you undertook in really short order has proved to pay a lot of dividends. So I love the rebranding of the bowl season. And, you know, unfortunately, my first year or so, we were in a COVID environment, so we didn't get to meet as regularly as we would have liked to do. We came from our meeting out in Scottsdale. That was a great meeting with all the bowl execs, and we have a really great fraternity. I have high regard for all of them, and I really look forward to getting to know each one better.
The Duke's Mayo Bowl is scheduled for Thursday, December 30th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. The game will air on ESPN. Danny, thank you so much for being on the show. Good luck the rest of the season.
Great. Thanks for having me.
And thank all of you for joining us on this week's Bowl Season Stories podcast. Please join us next week when we will welcome Grace Rayner from The Athletic and Notre Dame legend Rocket Ismail. If you like the show, we'd appreciate you dropping a 5-star rating for the podcast. And as always, you can follow all the podcast and bowl season news on social media at Bowl Season. Thank you for listening.